The $9 million Vernal Valletta $9 million luxury apartment is not supposed to lose value quietly. It is supposed to bleed value the way every high-end asset does, visibly, aggressively, on an open market where buyers and sellers watch the tickers crash in real time. That is the fundamental math of elite real estate. You pay a staggering premium for transparency, for unshakable documentation, and for the absolute certainty that comes with a bulletproof structural pedigree. But when a satellite orbiting 700 kilometers above the Persian Gulf in December 2024 locked its radar onto one of the most iconic, hyper-luxury residential spires in the Dubai Marina, the data that beamed back shattered the illusion. It revealed that this towering monument to global wealth was slowly, relentlessly settling into the reclaimed sand it was built upon. This isn't an engineering story. It's a real estate horror show. The data proved the tower had dropped nearly 3 inches over a 7-year period. Inside the triplex penthouses, nobody had a clue. The high-net-worth buyers who dropped up to $9 million per unit had been told exactly what they wanted to hear by brokers, marketing slick books, and glossy offering plans, that they were purchasing the most secure, elite address money could buy. The satellites just made all of that quietly, mathematically untrue. Designer superstructure too. Understand the massive financial exposure here, you have to look at what was sold and exactly who bought it. The Dubai Marina and its adjacent coastal strips aren't ancient bedrock. They are master-engineered, reclaimed land masses. Thin strips of sand and packed aggregate pushed up against the sea, sitting just feet above the waterline. In the mid-2000s, mega developers decided to turn this coastline into a playground for the ultra-rich. The concept was audacious: slap the name of a legendary European luxury automotive brand onto a glass and steel super tall, turning a skyscraper into a weaponized status symbol that doubled as a vertical investment vehicle. They licensed the ultra-luxury automotive brand, brought in elite international architects, and in January 2017, opened what was marketed as the premier automobile-branded residential tower on the planet, the car elevator in the sky, the ultimate selling point, a patented, multi-million-dollar engineering marvel built directly into the core of the building. A high-speed supercar elevator. You don't park in a dark basement. You drive your Bugatti or McLaren straight into a glass-walled lift at ground level. The system rockets you and your vehicle upward at hundreds of feet per minute. In less than 60 seconds, you arrive at the top of the sky-high tower, where the elevator doors slide open directly into your private living room. Your multi-million-dollar hypercar parks in a customized sky garage, visible right from your master bedroom through reinforced glass. The building boasted hundreds of custom sky parking slots for its exclusive residences. The marketing campaign was a single devastatingly effective sentence: sleep with your sports car. The financial trap was set, and global capital rushed in exactly as planned. The plunder of global wealth, the financial gravity of this branded tower, attracted a buyer profile that luxury developers normally only dream about. European football stars reportedly dropped $9 million for mid-tier units. Crypto founders, oil tycoons, and international tech magnates snapped up the higher floors. Top-tier influencers and artists rented the lower suites just for the prestige of filming the supercar lift in action. Sale prices rapidly escalated from $5 million to well over $20 million for the penthouses. But the prestige came with a brutal maintenance cost. Monthly building fees for the top-tier residents ran as high as $12,000. A massive percentage of these units were purchased through anonymous corporate shells and offshore holding structures. The exact foreign investor setup that has come to define the Dubai luxury real estate landscape over the past decade. The tower wasn't just a residential building, it was a vertical Swiss bank account. It was a place to park global wealth with the unusual logistical benefit of being able to park a Lamborghini next to your dining table. What the buyers ignored, however, was the geology beneath the glitz. T-Sand Trap Dubai is not built on solid granite. Underneath the pristine asphalt and manicured palm trees is a complex, hyper-porous layer cake of loose marine sand, silt, and fractured limestone, constantly shifting with the pressure of the Persian Gulf's water table. Geologists describe the coastal soil matrix as the structural equivalent of a giant sponge, resting on a wet beach. When you place a massive 60-story concrete and glass superstructure directly on top of that matrix, two devastating physics equations activate immediately. The dead load. Millions of tons of structural weight press straight down, the vibration effect. A decade of nonstop adjacent construction, heavy pile drivers, and neighboring tower excavations violently shake the surrounding ground. Under this relentless pressure, loose sand grains respond the exact same way every time. They slowly, inevitably rearrange themselves into a tighter pack. Engineers call this phenomenon creep or load-induced compression. The building doesn't collapse in a sudden, dramatic flash. It sinks the way a heavy encyclopedia sinks into a sandbox, imperceptibly, a fraction of a millimeter at a time, every single time a heavy truck passes or a new foundation is dug nearby. On solid rock, that settlement eventually hits a hard stop. On reclaimed coastal sand, it never truly does. Internet reality check. Before we look at the exact satellite radar readouts, I want to pose a question because this is a cold real estate calculation, not just a technical study. If you owned a $9 million asset in a Dubai skyscraper that had sunk nearly 3 inches over 7 years, and the developer's engineers insisted it was safe, but there was absolutely no independent public monitoring system tracking what happens next, would you hold your position or would you liquidate? Tell me your answer in the comments right now. Give me your exit price. We'll see if that number changes by the end of this file. The Spatial Surveillance in December 2024. A team of international geophysicists specializing in urban subsidence exposed what the developers, brokers, and elite residents never saw coming. Utilizing data from advanced orbital radar satellites, the researchers deployed a cutting-edge technique called interferometric synthetic aperture radar, or INSAR, by bouncing radar beams off the tower's glass and steel facade from 700 kilometers in space. INSAR can track vertical ground movement down to a fraction of a millimeter. When they processed the data archive spanning from 2016 through 2023 along the heavily developed coastal strips of Dubai, they didn't just find one sinking structure. They discovered a subterranean crisis. Across the marina, Business Bay, and the fringes of downtown, dozens of high-rises were quietly settling between 1 and 3 inches over the 7-year window. In certain localized clusters of reclaimed land, up to 70% of the coastal towers showed measurable subsidence. And sitting right at the apex of that list, sinking faster than almost all of its neighbors, was the branded luxury Supercar tower. The in Vielfault, the most photographed architectural marvel on the Strip, was losing its footing in a way that was completely invisible from the boulevard. There were no jagged cracks splitting the marble lobby walls. There was no visible tilt to the naked eye, no blaring alarms, and no emergency evacuations that would trigger breaking news alerts on international feeds. It required space-grade technology measuring shifts thinner than the edge of a coin to spot the truth. The researchers were highly precise with their conclusions, understanding that panic can destroy a real estate market overnight. They immediately anticipated the terrifying comparison everyone in the luxury market would make: the infamous structural failures and sudden condominium collapses that have made global headlines in recent years. The scientists explicitly checked their data against those catastrophic historical models. Their core finding, the one you need to remember, is that uniform settlement of this speed is not an immediate structural failure vector. The Supercar Tower study is not a warning that the skyscraper is about to tip into the Persian Gulf next week, but from an underwriting standpoint, what it reveals is a slow-motion financial disaster that is almost impossible for an insurance company or a prospective buyer to ignore. The steady state. Compression. The real danger here is not that a tower settles a few inches. Standard structural engineering dictates that massive skyscrapers will find their footing, compress the immediate soil beneath them during the first few years of construction, and then stabilize. They are supposed to go still, but this specific luxury spire kept dropping for 7 years post-completion, long after the ground should have locked up. Data from the satellite analysis confirmed that the subsidence curve wasn't flattening out. It was progressing at a steady, linear rate. In short, the building is still moving. It has not stopped. And that movement triggers a sequence of financial shocks that don't show up in the architectural plans. They show up directly on the balance sheet. Think about the math. Insurer underwriters recalculate premiums based on soil stability data, driving up annual building maintenance costs. Resale comparables, valuation experts, and luxury brokers must disclose independent satellite findings to institutional buyers, instantly chilling demand. Mortgage underwriting, major global banks reassess their loan-to-value risk, demanding higher down payments for units inside a moving structure. None of these numbers wait for a wall to crack. They shift the moment a scientific study gets indexed on the open web. The absence of a rescue. If you look at luxury engineering failures worldwide, the response is usually an eye-wateringly expensive rescue operation. When San Francisco's Millennium Tower began sinking and tilting, engineers, insurers, and developers burned over $120 million on a complex underpinning project to anchor the building to deep bedrock. When high-end towers in New York or London face structural anomalies, condo boards head straight to court to secure hundreds of millions in remediation funds. But here along the reclaimed coastlines, there is no rescue plan on the table. Because until recently, no one was legally required to even look. Investigative real estate reports published in December 2025 revealed a gaping hole in coastal asset management. While the local building codes are among the strictest in the world for initial design and construction, there was no mandated post-occupancy law requiring developers or property management companies to continuously monitor ground settlement once the keys were handed over. Owners were entirely free to never measure the ground beneath them. And unsurprisingly, they didn't. Differential settlement, the true value killer. The official statements from stakeholders focus entirely on structural safety. The architects confidently affirm the tower's integrity. Municipal authorities point out that the building complies with strict municipal codes and poses no immediate threat. They are likely 100% correct. The building is structurally stable today. The columns are intact, the glass facade is highly flexible, and no emergency evacuations are on the horizon. But the geophysicists keep pointing to a far more insidious engineering threat. Differential settlement. A skyscraper can sink 3 inches uniformly and remain perfectly fine. The financial and structural nightmare begins if one corner of the tower settles faster than the opposite side. That uneven, microscopic tilt is what snaps internal plumbing lines inside the walls, shears waterproof seals, warps heavy glass panels under intense desert heat, and slowly pulls custom apartment doors out of their frames. It acts like a designer dining table with one leg sinking into a plush rug. And right now, the only honest answer to whether this uneven warping is actively happening to this branded masterpiece is that nobody has installed the ground-level sensors to check. The clock is ticking by February 2026. The public release of the satellite data forced a major shift. When a massive new branded residential project was approved nearby, municipal authorities finally clamped down, forcing the developers to actively monitor ground subsidence during construction and for exactly 1 year after completion. It was the first time anyone on this specific strip of reclaimed coast was legally forced to watch the earth beneath their feet. 1 tower, 1 year. Meanwhile, decades of hyperdense construction sit on a shifting coastline. Let's be completely honest about the real estate mechanics here. If a super tall tower is engineered to code, but sits on reclaimed sand that will continue to compact over time, whose job is it to manage the fallout after the keys are handed over? The developer who cashed the checks and moved on to the next mega project? The homeowners association made up of busy expats who aren't structural engineers? The global bank holding the mortgages? The insurer facing future claims? Rig, HT now. The practical answer is nobody's job. The money flows, the sales close, and the property taxes are collected based on data that ignores the changing reality of the ground. The old misstack the billionaires occupying the upper floors, the international sports stars, the tech founders, the wealth fund managers bought a beautiful illusion. They paid for a flawless view, a high-speed car elevator, and an architecture engineered so thoroughly they never have to touch the outside world. But you cannot buy the ground. When the scientific study broke, The researchers summarized their message carefully, stating they didn't want to alarm the market, but simply present the facts of the subsidence. That is exactly how a slow-motion real estate crisis sounds before the market prices it in. Ultimately, there are two versions of this tower. One is a safe, hyper-luxury achievement of modern design. The other is a warning, a multi-million-dollar monument sinking into sand while the sea rises to meet it. I asked you if you would sell your unit. Now, tell me, whose responsibility is this? The next tower is already going up, and the sand is already moving.